G'day, it's Mike here. I'm doing a series on the DF65s on tuning tips, and what we're doing today is I'm talking about the A plus rig. I've got a A plus sail there which I've just put on, and I've got three measurements which I want to talk about, but principally I want to talk about shape. And what I mean by that is the depth of your sail, where the drive of the sail is, and how you create that. Okay, so basically when we get these sails, we buy a set of sails, they've got some battens on it, and it's a flat piece of cloth. The only way you can adjust these sails is by adjusting 3 points on the sail: the clew, the tack, and the head, and the leech. Okay, well, there's 3 points, but you put in shape basically by, or taking shape out by adjusting your foot position. So I'm going to talk about three measurements which I have. So light air breezes, so 6 kilometers an hour, 12 kilometers an hour, and 18 kilometers an hour. Over 18 kilometers an hour, you probably need to change your sail and go to an A or a B rig. All right, so the principles of sailing is, if we draw an imaginary line between there and there, we have depth in the sail. What we're trying to do is, generally what the old adage was, to have the depth, the main part of the depth of the sail at around about 30%, 30 or 40%. That has changed. The principles of that has changed, and it now has, you want your depth as far back as possible. Very difficult to do on a flat sail, but what we're trying to do is move the draft back aft, okay, and that creates more lift, more drive. So very similar to the sail, the shape of a Boeing 747. If you look there, we've got this drive. So wherever that is pictured, you get a drive position against here, and that hits, because it's pushing you sideways, it hits this and makes you go forward. So what we do is I try and move the draft as far back as possible. The way I do that is with the foot position and the cunning eye position. So what I do there is, to ease it off, I just push it out, and I've actually got this set up at the moment in my light weather position. So I've pushed that in as far as there. I've got 35, around 35 on that angle there, and I have this as loose as possible. And by loose as possible, I mean, you know, you can put almost a finger through there and create a little bit of, if we draw a line between there and your head, or the end of this, I have around about a finger of depth, or about 15 mil of depth on there, to create some shape into the sail. These sails, I purchased these from Daniel Bergen, and Daniel's had a very good concept with the design of he calls it the power head. What this does is, by having a flat section up there, it moves the drive further aft. There's a slightly shorter batten here, and it pushes the drive further aft into that section there, which is what I like. On the jib, I don't know whether you can see the jib, but this is set up for light airs in conditions like this, which is there's no chop. So you can actually, no chop, because you don't need the drive. I can run a 21 on that jib, and I have the drive basically in the middle of the sail, because it's very difficult to adjust this. But if you notice, on my luff, I've got a very soft luff on the jib. And I've got it, and basically the forestay drops off a couple of mil, and that creates shape and moves the shape back aft. That is for the under 6 knots, or 6 kilometers an hour. As we move up, basically what I do is I tighten the foot and push that down to about 28. I open, and I do the opposite with the jib. So I've got the markers there. So I basically move that in to around about 28. And why do I do that? Because when the breeze gets up to 12 kilometers an hour to 18 kilometers an hour, you need more drive in your jib to drive the boat through the waves, through the chop. And what I don't want is a tight leech. As we get into the tighter breezes, I run this basically up to, when we're doing 18 kilometers an hour, I'll run this up to around 15, and I'll ease the leech off, so I've got around about 60 on the leech. What I generally do is I keep this pretty consistent. This is about 50 off here, and I'm running 38 off the boom there. Importantly, as the breeze goes into that 18 kilometre an hour, you need to push this out to around about 30. So it goes from 21, 25 to 30. On this one it goes, when it's stronger, 15 to 28 to 35. And you can move it around between that. As the breeze comes in, I also will tighten this up. What does that do? I don't know whether you've noticed, but what that does is it moves your draft forward. Flattens the sail, moves the draft forward, and I've got an open leech. I usually put possibly a little bit more backstay, but we're not talking about that. The key then is, when in those conditions, is to take your boat out and throw it on the water and see whether there's balance. I'm always trying to seek a boat in lighter airs which has got lift, so it's got a bit of weather helm, but as it gets stronger and heavier, I want a boat which is completely balanced, pretty well balanced. Now, in terms of balance, one way of changing balance is to move your battery. So in heavier conditions, I'll move the battery further aft, and that creates better balance, because if you've got your battery up here, what it does is it pushes the nose in and it creates lift. In lighter airs, that's better because it keeps your stern of your boat out. But as in the heavier breezes, what you want is the battery further aft, so you don't have that lift occurring, caused by the siding of the boat against the chop. That's it for now. What I wanted to do is just introduce you to Daniel, who produced this set of sails. And hi Daniel, how are you?
Good to be here. Appreciate the demonstration you've been putting on.
Yeah.
Just a little bit about DB Sails. We set out, speaking with people like Mike, we found that these boats are so capable. Once you take an A+ rig, they're going from 0 knots through to the full extent before you go. We basically go from A+ to B rigs now. We very rarely use our A rigs. And the problem that we were coming up with is a set of sails would be good in the 0 to 6 knots, maybe 6 to 10, but it'd be terrible at the top end, or vice versa, terrible at the low end. So we set out to design a set of sails that we could actually cater from 0 all the way through to the top end, which is about 18 kilometres an hour, 20 kilometres an hour, maybe more, so say about 12, 13 knots. And the concept that I come up with here is this is what we call the power head. I know Mike sort of put a little bit here in. What I've done is tried to stiffen up your actual luff. Now the reason why we've done that is that if you just want to hold that there, Mike, is if I use my hand here, if your hand was there and you just pushed down on it and it had no fulcrum point, it's not really, the whole sail is actually going off. If you put something here and then try to bend it off, it's only bending off past that point. Now we start with very little luff, so luff tension on here in these boats. It's only when it really gets high end sail we actually put a lot of luff tension on. So by keeping this tight on the luff, it's allowing the head to flick off how we want it to flick off, not the whole top of the sail, but just the actual leech itself is opening up, and that gives you the power. And that's why we call it the power head. The other thing that we did, Mike did sort of mention, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't want to give too much away, because we put a lot of research and development in this, but just because the maximum sail, the maximum battens say it's 70 mil long, that's the maximum. Doesn't mean that's what you use. So there's a hint for some of you sail makers out there.
Thanks Daniel for your advice. We're testing these sails out today, so hopefully they'll perform well. We've got a nice group of sailors here. We've got about 20 odd boats today sailing, which is good.
Give us a wave.
Please feel welcome to subscribe to the channel. We've got lots of content and information which hopefully will give you some tips on how to improve your boat. So for me, that's it for now. See you on the water. Bye for now.